Here's a letter that really was a blessing to me. You know, the thing that's so close to my heart is the Jewish scriptures. Dear Dr. and Mrs. Beshore, about a year ago, you sent me a booklet, What the Talmud and Tanakh Say About the Messiah. I think that was the title. How you found me and knew that I was a Jewish boy was a mystery. It just so happened that I am a Messianic Jew and have been since 1975. The following week, I had a lunch date with a Chabad rabbi friend of mine whom I had just informed after 10 years of friendship that I was a believer in Yeshua. Your booklet could not have come at a better time. I gave it to him at lunch, and although he's not a believer as yet, as far as I know, my talk with him and your literature have planted the seed. God bless you and your work. Enclosed as a token of my support and a request that you please send me 3 more copies of your wonderful publication. So, now, Ezekiel chapter 38, 1 through 39:16 is a promise of a coming invasion of Israel by Russia as a supplier of arms and the leader, with Germany, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Turkey, Jordan, Egypt, North African countries. That invasion today is very, very close, beloved. Now, things have a way of heating up and cooling off. And I think I've been preaching for the last 20 years that this invasion would take place in the next 5 to 10 years. Now I just say next Friday. But I want you to see why we are so close. And with what Mike has to tell you today, and with what's happening today in the Islamic world, we are close. Now, you have your great Bible. And between now and Christmas, because of a great gift that we have been given, we are going to sell these for just $10. Now, what a Christmas gift that is. So, you can have your Bibles and give them out, and great Christmas gift to give someone. Your Christmas shopping's all done. Okay, now we've given you 2 reasons. You got your Bibles open to page 744. 2 reasons this invasion takes place before the rapture and before the tribulation. We gave 2 of them last week. The first of the 5 you see in verse 8, and then in verse 11 and in verse 14. You see Israel dwelling securely, living in cities with neither bars nor gates. Now, the word is not shalom. They're not dwelling at peace. But the word batak means they have secure borders. Very good. I'm glad you remembered that. Secure borders. They have a secure border with Lebanon. A few years back, they had a war with Lebanon, sponsored by Syria. They pushed Lebanon back up to the Litani River. In the 6-day war, they took the Golan Heights, which made it a secure border with Syria. They have a signed security agreement with Jordan and with Egypt. So they have secure borders. And then they gave Gaza back a few years ago, which we see in the book of Zephaniah, chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. So, that's the first one. Israel today is dwelling securely. Then the second reason is seen in verse 13. Sheba, Dedan, Tarshish, and all the young lions thereof shall say unto thee, Art thou come to take the spoil? Art thou assembled thy company to take the prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, and to take great spoil. Now, I love to ask you the question, and you see me repeating this, but the reason I repeat it, I just love to do it. I'm going to do it again. Now, when this invasion takes place, the Western powers don't go to war to protect Israel. They simply issue a mild protest. Do you think that our country might ever get a president that would so weaken our military, so decimate our military, and throw Israel under the bus, and would not come to the protection of Israel when this happened? No, that's not possible. Do you realize we are there? Oh, I love to say that one. Now, the fifth reason you will notice, the third reason, I'm sorry, is seen in our next page. That's the first reason. Okay, I'm getting them. Here it is. This invasion gives rise to a worldwide revival. Notice Ezekiel 39, verse 7. When this invasion takes place, and my holy name will I make known in the midst of my people Israel, neither will I suffer my holy name to be profaned anymore. And the nations shall know that I am Jehovah, the Holy One in Israel. And then go back to the last verse of Ezekiel 38, verse 23. And I will magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will make myself known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am Jehovah. When this invasion takes place, it will be the removal of the Islamic presence from the world. It will be a miracle so great that Jeremiah 16:14, that God changes his identity from the God who led you out of Egypt to the God who led you out of the north country. Now think of that. All through the Old Testament, God is known as the God who led you out of Egypt. But now God says in Jeremiah 16:14, I'm going to perform a miracle so great that the miracle of the Exodus will pale in insignificance. It is this miracle of God removing the Islamic presence. Now, beloved, the Islamic presence is growing, and we are concerned about the Muslims coming into this country. Beloved, they're already here. They're here. And they are plotting to do more and more of what we saw this week out in San Bernardino. Attacks. Do you know that the Muslims in this, where do Muslims meet? Mosque. The mosques in this country are financed by the Muslim Brotherhood, and most of the Muslim mosques have a different teacher that come, and they keep coming around. So it's hard for our government to keep up with what's being taught in those mosques. But they are slowly and systematically changing what might be modern Muslims to what Muslims really are. And remember, Islam says, kill the infidels. We're the infidels. And they see themselves as destined to have a caliphate that takes over the whole world. Do you understand that? But when God takes out Islam, it will be the removal of the Islamic presence. Now, this invasion gives place to a worldwide revival. Now, it sounds like in Ezekiel 39:7, my holy name will I make known in the midst of my people Israel. Neither will I suffer my holy name to be profaned anymore, and the nations shall know that I am Jehovah. It sounds as though when this invasion takes place, the nations of the world will turn to the Lord at that point. But we know that Israel's conversion is in 3 stages. Now you follow my notes on page 8. The last stage is in Hosea 5:14 to 6:3. Will you turn there in your Bibles, please? Hosea 5:14 to 6:3, page 774. God says in Hosea 5:14, I. Now, whenever you see the personal pronoun in the Old Testament, what do you always ask yourself? Of whom speaketh the prophet this? Of himself or someone else? Because the prophet spoke by 2 different methods. Sometimes he would speak by direct oracle and say, thus saith the Lord. But other times he become very dramatic and impersonate someone. Now who's speaking? I will be unto Ephraim as a lion, as the young lion to the house of Judah. Well, it's Messiah. And when is he speaking this? At his first coming, when he was in Ephraim and Judah. Even I will tear and go away. I will carry off, and there shall be none to deliver. I will go and return to my place. When did Messiah leave Ephraim and Judah and return to his place? At his ascension. Now, the word till, that's a time element. I'm going to go there till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. When will they do that? In their affliction, in the tribulation, they will seek me earnestly, and you'll notice the footnote saying, come, let us return unto Jehovah, for he hath torn, and he will heal us. He hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days he will revive us. On the 3rd day he will raise us up, and we shall live before him. And let us follow on to know Jehovah is going forth as sure as the morning, and he will come to us. What day? On the 3rd day, as the latter rain that watereth the earth. Now this is the final stage of Israel's conversion. It is a double fulfillment. It says what's going to happen the last 3 days of the tribulation. The Sanhedrin will reconvene. They will retry Jesus. I have found in the Talmud 21 laws, Talmudic laws, that the Jews broke in the trial of Jesus. And they will release a document. Who hath believed our report? And to whom hath the arm of the Lord been revealed? Why, he grew up before us as a tender plant, as a root out of a dry ground. And when we saw him, there was no form nor comeliness that we should desire him. Nevertheless, here are the facts as we now know them. He was wounded for our transgression and bruised for our iniquities. And with his stripes have we been healed. Where is that found? Isaiah 53. It is the great hymn of Israel's repentance at the end of the tribulation. And the Sanhedrin will reconvene. issue that document, and there will be little prayer groups that will take place all over Israel. That's the final installment. But there's a time element here. Jesus said, I will go and return to my place. What's the next word? Till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. In their affliction, the tribulation, they will seek me earnestly. Now, for how long do they wait? 2 days. And the Lord comes the third day. Jesus was crucified about 28 or 30 A.D. If he was crucified in 28 A.D., 2 days, 2,000 years, would take you to what year? Fourth grade arithmetic, 2028. Take off 7, you've got the outside year of the rapture, 2021. And I want to tell you, if the Lord doesn't come back by 2021, I'll never preach another sermon. Pretty safe, eh? Okay, so you see the time element there brings us to where we are today, beloved. Now, the second phase of Israel's conversion takes place with the 144,000. In the first quarter of the tribulation, 144,000 Jews, to whom we are now giving our Jewish scriptures, will come to the Lord. And they will be protected, sealed by God, so they can't be killed. And they will take the gospel where? To every tongue, tribe, and nation. Revelation 7:9. And Isaiah 26:9 says, when thy judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world learn righteousness. So there will be billions, you got that, capital B, billions who will turn to the Lord during the tribulation. Now, the first stage of Israel's conversion takes place before the tribulation begins. Now, I want you to turn to the handout today, Joel 2. Now, what I've done for you here is absolute genius. And Dave Lehman put it together for you. Now, in verse 20, we have this remarkable verse. Joel 2:20. You have it now, page 1, your note, your handout. I will remove far off from you the northern army. What's the northern army? Russia. And will drive it into a land barren and desolate. Why will Russia be barren and desolate at that point? Because God will send a fire on Russia and destroy it. And then notice what happens. Its forepart into the eastern sea, and its hinder part into the western sea. And its stench shall come up, and its ill savor will come up, because it hath done great things. Now, this is a prophecy of the Gog and Magog war. It is a prophecy of the destruction of that northern army. And God says, I'll move it back to a land barren. Ezekiel 38 says he sends a fire on Russia to destroy it. And I want to tell you something. If we, Bible teachers in this country, don't know that Ezekiel 38 is about Russia, I want to tell you the pastors in Russia sure do. I had 60 of them in Moscow. And I said, I want to talk to you men about Gog and Magog. Where is Meshech? We're in Moscow. They all point. Where's Tobolsk? That's the capital of the western area of Russia. Who's Gog? Well, that's a future ruler of Russia. And there's only one country north of Israel that borders on two oceans, and that is Russia. So do you see that Joel 2:20 is a reference to Gog and Magog? Isn't that clear? Yes. I'm glad one of you say yes. Now, verse 21. By the law of double reference, Joel discusses the millennium down through 28a. Fear not, O land, and be glad and rejoice, for Jehovah hath done great things. Be not afraid, ye beasts of the field, for the pastures of the wilderness do spring, for the tree beareth its fruit. The fig tree and the vine do yield their strength. Be glad then, ye children of Zion, and rejoice in Jehovah your God. For he giveth you the former rain in just measure, and causeth to come down for you the rain, the former rain and the latter rain in the first month. Now there's some good old charismatics say, the former rain was Pentecost. The latter rain is another Pentecost. God's going to pour out his Spirit on the church in the last days. No, this is a prophecy of the millennium. You got it? They're going to have literal rain during the millennium. Verse 24, the floors shall be full of wheat, the vat shall overflow with new wine and oil, and I will restore to you the years the locust hath eaten. Now the locusts here are pictured in the terms of his great army that he refers to back in verse 11. And we see that great army in verses 1 through 11 of chapter 2, a host of demons. And God says, I'll restore unto you the years of the locusts have eaten, the cankerworm, the caterpillar, my palmer worm, the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you. And you go back to verse 11, and you'll see God calls the demon host his army. And ye shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and shall praise the name of Jehovah your God, that hath dealt wondrously with you, and my people shall never be put to shame. And you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am Jehovah your God, and there is none else, and my people shall never be put to shame. Now, when only could this refer to? The millennium. And it shall come to pass afterward, after what? After the millennium begins, I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. Period. New paragraph. And we're going to change the word and from a conjunctive to but a disjunctive. Now you say, what right do you have that? Because the little word wow, W-O-W in Hebrew, can be translated either way, as and, a disjunctive, or a conjunctive, or but as a disjunctive. I'm going to show you that it has to be translated but as a disjunctive. But your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Now you'll notice my note there. During the millennium in 28b, this cannot refer to the millennium because vision and prophecy will be sealed up during the millennium. You got that point? Do you have it? Okay. Now you see he's talking about a time in Joel 2:28b, that's the second part of verse 28, where he will send vision and prophecy to his people in Israel. that cannot be during the millennium, because during the millennium, vision and prophecy will be sealed up. So it has to refer to a different period of time. What is it? Well, he makes it very clear what it is. He says, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions. Verse 29, and also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit, and I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood, fire, pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood. When? Before the great and terrible day of Jehovah cometh. Now, what's the great and terrible day of Jehovah? The tribulation. So he is now in verse 28b begun to talk about the period of time in which we are now living, the time before the tribulation. Now, what will cause vision and prophecy and this great turning to the Lord in Israel about what we've just read? What you see in verse 20. So you see in the middle of verse 28, by the law of recurrence, he's come back to what he was talking about in verse 20. In verse 20, he's talking about the tribulation. He's talking about Gog and Magog. Then he skips by the law of double reference in verses 21 through 28a to the millennium. But in 28b, he comes back to the Gog and Magog war, which he sees take place before the tribulation and then before the rapture. Verse 31, the sun shall be turned to darkness, the moon into blood, before the great and terrible day of the Lord cometh. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of Jehovah shall be delivered. Delivered from what? The tribulation. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be those that escape, as Jehovah hath said, and among the remnant those whom Jehovah doth call. Now how only, beloved, will people be delivered from the tribulation and escape the tribulation? By the rapture. Now, do you see that Joel here pictures a great revival in Israel breaking out with the Gog and Magog war, and that war begins before the tribulation and before the rapture? Do you see that? How many of you do not see it? Well, several of you don't get it yet. So come to the room afterward and we'll go over it. Now, one more time, I'm going to cover this. You got your notes here. In verse 20, what's he talking about? The Gog and Magog war. Then by the law of double reference, in verses 21 through 28a, he discusses the millennium. Then in 28b, by the law of recurrence, he comes back to what he was talking about in verse 20, the Gog and Magog war, and shows that it takes place before the tribulation and before the rapture. Now you study this and you'll have it. And thanks to Dave Lehman for putting that together for us. Now, that then is the third reason. It gives rise to the first stage of Israel's revival, which then ultimately will give rise to the second stage, And finally, the third stage of Israel's revival at the end of the tribulation. Now, verse 4 is pretty conclusive proof. You with me now? Ezekiel 39, verses 8 to 9. We are back to page 9. And you notice how we spelt the implements there? How that happens, I don't know. Behold, it cometh, and it shall be done, saith the Lord Jehovah. This is the day whereof I have spoken, and they that dwell in the cities of Israel. They that dwell where? Israel. They that dwell where? Israel. In the cities of Israel shall go forth and burn, make fires of the weapons, and burn them, both shields and the bucklers, the bows and the arrows, and the handstaves and the spears. And they shall make fires of them 7 years. Now, I want to prove to you, first of all, that these fires could not burn into the millennium. 2 Peter chapter 3. 2 Peter chapter 3. Page 229. Verse 10. But the day of the Lord will come. What's the day of the Lord? The tribulation. It will come as a thief. To Christians? No, to the unsaved. In the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall be dissolved with fervent heat, and the earth and the works that are therein shall be burned up. Seeing that these things are thus all to be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in all holy living and godliness, looking for and earnestly desiring the coming of the day of God, by reason of the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. But according to his promise, we look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. Now, where is the promise that Peter would have had in mind after the earth is destroyed and the millennium begins? That was the question. And you're supposed to answer it. It's in the notes, beloved. Keep your place here and go to Isaiah 65, 16. Page 644. God says in Isaiah 65, 16, so that he who blesseth himself in the earth shall bless himself in the God of truth, and he that sweareth in the earth shall swear by the God of truth, because the former troubles before the end of the tribulation judgments are, what? Forgotten, and because they are hid from mine eye. Now, do you see my cup? Do you see it now? No. Why? I've covered it up. Now, what is God going to do at the end of the tribulation? Destroy the earth. Then he's going to create new material, cover up the old wrecked earth. Verse 17, for, behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered, nor come into mind. So that if the implements of war were still burning into the millennium, would they be remembered? Yes, they would be remembered. But they can't be remembered because they're destroyed and the earth is created anew. But be ye glad and rejoice forever. Uh-oh. I thought the millennium lasted only 1,000 years. And Doc, you're saying is lasting for forever. Now listen, the Hebrew word forever is not like the Greek term. The Hebrew word forever takes 3 English words to describe it: continuity, perpetuity, or duration. It is said of David that he reigned for 40 years. But it also says he reigned forever. What does that mean? Simply that he reigned for 40 years without a break in his reign. So the word forever does not mean endless duration in Hebrew. For behold, I create Jerusalem a rejoicing and her people a joy. Isaiah 65:19. And I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people, and there shall be heard in her no more the voice of weeping and the voice of crying. There shall be no more thence, an infant of days. Our first little boy died when he was 5 months old. That won't happen in the millennium. Nor an old man that hath not filled his days, for the child shall die 100 years old. So this cannot be the eternal order. And when Peter talks about we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, he's talking about this passage in Isaiah 65. Some think that he's referring to the eternal order in Revelation 20, 21, and 22. How could that not be? Because they were not yet written when Peter wrote 2 Peter. You with me? Please say yes. Okay. And the sinner, being 100 years old, shall be accursed. So during the millennium, those that are born will get to live to the age of 100. If on their 100th birthday they haven't accepted the Lord, they'll be cast into the pit you see in the last verse of the book of Isaiah. So, you see that Peter, in 2 Peter 3, is talking about the destruction of the earth at the end of the tribulation, and according to his promise, we look for new heavens and a new earth of the question. Your answer? Come on, of the millennium. You got it? Now, I've got you 2 charts here. Look at the chart showing the implements of war could not burn into the millennium. You see, 2 Peter 3:10, we've gone to that. The Lord destroys the earth at the end of the tribulation. Therefore, the burning of the implements of war could not take place into the millennium. Therefore, Ezekiel 38 has to take place before the tribulation, and the rapture is to take place at the end of the trib, and the rapture is to take place before the tribulation. At the end of the trib, the earth is destroyed by fire and is created anew at the beginning of the millennium. You got that chart. Now look at the other chart. And this shows where we are today. This is a chart showing that the invasion is 3.5 years before the rapture. You with me on that chart now? Got it open? Ezekiel 39 says that they that dwell in the cities of Israel. Who dwells in the cities of Israel? Jews. Now, at the end of the tribulation, the Jews will be driven out of Israel. Revelation 12, and they will have to flee into the wilderness for 3.5 years. I'm sorry? Mid-trib, yes. Revelation 12:6. The woman fled into the wilderness where she hath a place prepared of God, that they may nourish her 1,260 days, which are the last half of the tribulation. Now, are you getting this? If the implements of war burn 7 years, and they are burned by they that dwell in the cities of Israel, and the Jews are driven out of the cities of Israel in the middle of the tribulation, when does this invasion then have to take place? 3.5 years before the tribulation begins. Okay, you got that? Now, that's pretty conclusive evidence. Now, there are 4 reasons, ironclad reasons. Now, here's the 5th one. Ezekiel chapter 30. Page 735. You got Ezekiel 30 in front of you? Yes, sir. The word of Jehovah came again unto me, saying, Son of man, prophesy, and say, Thus saith the Lord Jehovah. By the way, this is in your notes, and this is on page number 9 in your notes. Egypt is prophesied to be destroyed before the tribulation begins. So here's a prophecy. Son of man, prophesy and say, Thus saith the Lord Jehovah, Wail ye, alas, for the day is near. Ezekiel is carried forward, and he's prophesying as he sees the day of the Lord near. Has it come yet? No, so he's prophesying a time before the tribulation. You got them? Okay. Even the day of Jehovah is near. It shall be a day of clouds, a day of the nations. Now, when the day of the Lord is near, a sword shall come upon Egypt, and anguish shall be in Ethiopia, when the slain shall fall in Egypt, and they shall take away her multitude, and her foundation shall be broken down. Ethiopian, Put, and Lud, and all the mingled people in Cub. Now there you see nations mentioned in Ezekiel 38. The children that is in land, that is in league, who's that? Russia, Germany, the other nations in Ezekiel 38, shall fall with them by the sword. So, you see Egypt destroyed before the day of the Lord, before the rapture begins. Now, here are 5 reasons that I give you that the invasion takes place before the rapture. Number 1, question. The Western powers are still in existence, which means the one world government has not yet taken place, which according to Daniel 7:23, there will be a one world government breaking into 10 divisions before the tribulation. That means that nations will lose their identities. So because the nations, Western nations, still have their identities, when this invasion takes place. It takes place before the one world government. The second reason, Israel is dwelling with secure borders. The third reason is come on, now you don't have to look at your... It leads to the first stage of Israel's conversion, which we saw in Joel 2, takes place before the day of the Lord. Then they burn the implements of war for 7 years. Who burns them? They that dwell in the cities of Israel. And the last reason, Egypt is destroyed before the tribulation. Now, beloved, these are the days. These are the days in which we're living. And I believe, I'm not certain, of course, but if I were Putin and Trump got elected, he will be elected in November, not go into office between then and January. I would perform this invasion then, while Obama is still in office. We may, don't say I said it. We may see it this next year, beloved. Now, I hope you can stay awake at night, not worry, because God's going to deal with the Muslims. He's going to remove them. He sends a fire on Russia and on them that dwell securely in the isles. There won't be a Muslim left that will admit that he's a Muslim after this. It is God's great victory. And he changes identity from the God who led you out of Egypt to the God who led you out of the north country. And that's my message. Now,